Welcome to this week's Game of Thrones discussion with myself, Brian, and Jordan over here.
Hey, how's it going?
And yeah, we're back after a 2 week break. After seeing the hyped up fight, and we're here to talk about the show.
Yeah, and sounds like you're battling some allergies there.
Yeah, I'm getting my ass handed to me by the allergies. So bear with me if I cough in the mic or something. I'll try my best not to. But yeah, let's go ahead and start this. I'll go ahead and give the spoiler alerts here. Of course, if you have not seen season 4, episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper, you want to back out now. Full spoilers for that, for this episode if you've not watched it yet. If you've not read, if you care about book spoilers, we will compare the similar events in the books. So if you care, if you're going to be reading the books and you have not made it to the end of Storm of Swords, you might want to back out. All right, so we'll leave the fight for last, and
Yes.
we'll start with the beginning of the episode opens with Molestown, the Molestown brothel, and Gilly's taking some troublesome harassment from one of the wenches there. I guess they're
Yeah.
not. I guess they don't like having a baby around, and
Yeah, no crime babies wake you up early in the morning, so they're not really enjoying having that around the establishment there.
indeed, and so yeah, they get interrupted. The Wildlings have hit Molestown, which is the closest encampment or village to the wall. So the threat is coming. They kill some brothers of the Night's Watch there who are out digging for gold. That's what they call it, and yeah. So we see the Wildlings just going out for pure brutality. They're just trying to make their presence known. They're trying to draw the Night's Watch off of the wall to come deal with them. That's their whole purpose of their brutality.
Okay, see, I was about to ask you because the whole wildlings running amok in the north, just south of the wall, has been somewhat confusing to me because obviously they climbed the wall to get over, and so I didn't understand what their purpose was other than just to cause chaos. I guess it should just make sense they're trying to draw the
Well, no,
Night's
you,
Watch.
you you make a good point because these are little things that I take for granted having read the books that maybe are not portrayed as accurately in the show, or maybe they don't, maybe they just mention it once in passing and it's kind of just established that we should remember it or something. But yeah, they kind of climb the wall because the one thing that is important to know about the Night's Watch historically is that you've heard before they're not supposed to take part in the politics of the kingdom. Their sole purpose of existing is to defend the realm from the threats of the North. So all the castles and forts that are built on this side of the wall, they are not built to defend against the South. The only thing they defend against is the North. So by sending a force of wildlings over the wall,
Hmm.
they are attacking a less defended area of the wall. And they're also, like I said, their other goal here was to pillage and like rape around the area in hopes that the Night's Watch would ride out to meet them in the field, because they would stand a better chance taking them out in the field and lowering their numbers for the huge assault that Mance Rayder has planned coming from the north. So that's a little bit about their tactics.
But yeah, and obviously we haven't seen much reaction. I mean, obviously the Night's Watch does know what is going on, but they haven't sent anybody outside of the two or three that were killed at the Molestown Lodge there. So I mean, obviously they weren't ready for a fight, and they were obviously slaughtered. But yeah, obviously Night's Watch is just trying to keep their numbers as intact as possible with the looming doom that is coming from the north.
Yeah, and they just have to bite their tongues on it and let the people fend for themselves, because like we're saying, they need every man on the wall possible, because while there may be like I don't know, maybe 100 or less wildlings south of the wall, those those people are nothing in comparison to the tens and hundreds of thousands north of the wall.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that the Boltons are ruling the north now, and the north has suffered great casualties, so they can't really defend themselves really against these wildlings at the moment, or or at least they won't expend the resources to do so.
It's sort of just it's all a perfect storm in this story. I mean, everything just seems to be ripe for any sort of horrific event to occur. Yeah, with the numbers in the north dwindled down to a lower level. So yeah, I guess also, I mean, the big thing from this scene is we see Ygritte again, and Ygritte shows compassion
Hmm.
toward Gilly and spares her and her child, even though they brutally murder everybody else. And like you had said in the past, you said Gilly wasn't taken to this location in the book, right? I mean, this is
Yeah,
all created for the show.
yeah. I guess they're just trying to give Gilly something to do, because at this point in the story, her and Sam are still north of the wall. They haven't made it back yet.
Okay.
So rather than having them just trekking for 2 seasons, they've put her in Mole's Town in imminent danger. So I guess it's to set up a threat so that she overcomes the threat or gets out of it. Just so she's fresh in people's memory, I guess.
And also, it set up something nice for Ygritte to show compassion that she hasn't fully turned into this wildling, bloodthirsty savage that is, ravaging the land. But
Yeah, she hasn't crossed the line. And, like she said, she knows where to stop, I guess, or she has a line that she doesn't cross.
and now Ygritte is Ygritte a character in the book? I can't
Yes.
remember. Is she? Okay, okay.
And yeah, Egret's a big character in the book, and it's almost like how I've said that John's plot has kind of halted in its tracks. It's been kind of on filler mode for most of the season, and it bothers me. One thing I've noticed about the show now is that I feel like they do great focusing on King's Landing. I feel like the showrunners put a lot of extra effort into King's Landing plot lines. And that might just be because most of the characters are there, or there's a good chunk of characters there. Now, it seems like the other plot lines sort of suffer a bit, in my opinion. I think John has been extremely weak the last several seasons. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think he's picked up a bit this season, but I will have to agree he dipped down quite a bit last season. Last season was his low point so far. I felt they built him up a little bit more this season, but still, like you said, it does. To me, who have not read the book, I have not read the books. I don't really notice the filler quite as much. I can kind of feel that this stuff is not very important,
Mhm.
but yeah, I feel like John's still building up. I feel like he's a much better character at this point than he was at this point last season.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I guess that's what I would compare it to is that reading about John in the book, he was one of my favorite chapters to read. Like he was one of the ones you look forward to reading. Kind of like you look forward to seeing Tyrion, or you look forward to seeing something from Jaime or whoever. Like John was one of the top. And that plot line was just as interesting as what's going on in King's Landing. It's just that I don't know if they haven't put enough attention to it, or I don't know. You're right. It is picking up, and I'm sure we'll see more of that soon.
Yeah.
And then, you said that you could feel that some things are not important. I find it funny. We'll segue into Theon and Moat Cailin. Well, right after they take Moat Cailin, I want to just make this quick reference where Roose Bolton is asking about Locke, and he's like, "Have you ever heard anything from Locke?" He's like, "No, I didn't." And he's like, "Oh, it's not important anyway." It's like, I just thought it was funny how it's like they're breaking the fourth wall almost on that.
Yeah, Roos is like, yeah, well, Bran is crippled and we haven't heard from him, so he's probably dead. So yeah, it's
No big
fine.
deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
So yeah, he served his purpose to take our attention for an episode or two.
Yeah.
But back to Moat Cailin. I want to talk about Moat Cailin a bit because this is a very interesting place to me in the books. I like to read about the locations in the Riverlands in the north. Moat Cailin is kind of where the Riverlands meet the north. And I know they didn't give much background story to this thing, but so Moat Cailin is a fort that was built in ancient days, like before when the Children of the Forest existed and stuff like that. And Moat Cailin is a fort that it is the boundary between the North and the Riverlands, and it is supposed to be untakeable from the south. That's why Moat Cailin is such a important strategic location. Is that if you hold Moat Cailin, you can hold Moat Cailin with like 100 men against thousands, like hundreds of thousands, because the way Moat Cailin is in this area where the Riverlands and the North meet. It's called the crag or it's the neck. It's called the neck, and it's a bunch of swamplands, and it's a brutal place. Like there's just quicksand everywhere, swamps, Uh, Now there's these creatures called lizard lions, which are like huge alligators that just destroy people. So there's all kinds of threats in this area. So the reason Moat Cailin is untakeable from the south is it has one little causeway that leads up to it from the south, and all around that is just swamp, and you have to walk like one or two men side by side through this causeway, and you're just getting rained arrows, and if you fall off the causeway, you're in the swamp, you're dead. If you're wearing armor, you sink in the quicksand, you die. So it's just a very strategic location. And so we get there in the show, the Ironborn hold it. The Greyjoys have a men's station there. From there, they've been conquering little places in the north. So of course, Ramsay wants to send Theon in to just kind of basically say, "Hey, I'm Theon Greyjoy. Let's get out of here." So they could take it without losing men, pretty much.
Yeah, he goes in there to negotiate the retreat, or the surrender. And I just want to ask one quick question: were there people? So the Greyjoys took it. Was there a large population there before they took it, or is it more of like just kind of a military place?
It's basically a ruin, and
Okay.
It's a ruin because the place is awful. Like, it's in a swamp. There's huge bugs and there's poisonous plants. It's just an awful place to be. So no one really lives there in time of peace.
Okay.
But when there's and that's another thing to clarify too, is that at one point Robb did hold Moat Cailin, and he did have men stationed there, but he had to call those troops down south to help him.
Okay.
It was then that the Greyjoys took it. So one thing interesting to note here too is some of my favorite characters, which are omitted from the scene, are in this part. In the Neck, this is the region where the Reeds come from. Mira and Jojen,
Yes.
who are with Bran right now. They're the Crannogmen, the people who live in the swamps. And so I don't know if you notice the details in the scene, but you'll see. They're walking through, looking at all. Everybody looks like they're in a shitty mood. Like, you see people laying around, and I think you see bodies being burned. Pretty much, Robb told the Crannogmen, like, the Crannogmen didn't march to war with the North because they're not armored, knights or warriors who fight the field. The Crannogmen fight from the swamps with arrows and darts, and they're more guerrilla warfare style, kind of, that's how they fight. So they're basically making life a living hell for the Ironborn who are in Moat Cailin. Like, they're attacking from the shadows and the swamps. They know how to navigate the swamps. They know where to walk. They're not wearing heavy armor. They're not sinking in so the Crannogmen are masters of that land, and they're just poisoning and they're just murdering all these Iron Men. And that's why you see all these people who look sick and they all look miserable, is because they've been like fending for their lives night and day, and that's why their leader, who's there, who takes the axe to the head.
Yes.
He starts to collapse when he's talking to Theon. It's because he is kind of poisoned already.
Yeah, he was definitely very sickly. I could tell that he was, I don't know if it was some sort of ailment that he like malaria or something like that, some sort of disease that would come from that area that he was not handling very well.
Yeah, so it's pretty much, they could be like on the wall. They'll be on the wall, like watching their posts, and one of them will take a dart in the neck, and they get a horrible poisonous, whatever, some disease or something, and they're just done. Like, they die a horrible death in a sick bed, pretty much. So I don't know. That's just a little background information on Moat Cailin, because they didn't go into much detail about what was going on there.
Yeah, also, visually, it was one of the more interesting places we've seen in a while, just because as Theon was walking up, you saw bodies laying in the swamp. Now, was there a battle there, or is that just bodies that are left there from people trying to attack?
I'm sure that there's been an ongoing battle there, pretty much.
Okay.
Like, they'll probably see Crannogmen out outside the walls, and maybe they'll try and go out there and take them down, or, the Iron Men are pretty much under constant harassment there. They're
Okay.
really... It's a hell for them, and the Crannogmen make that place a living hell, and I like that part of the story. I think I found the Crannogmen to be very interesting.
I wish we got to touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe they'll be brought up again later. We'll see. So Theon does take he gives his speech. And the guy's men betray him, and this is typical classic Ramsay. In the letter it says, hey, surrender yourselves and you'll be treated fairly like me or whatever. Like, Theon's saying you'll be treated fairly like I was.
Yes.
And then it shows the guy, they surrender. And then next scene, you see his head and he's been flayed to death. So yeah, they were all pretty much flayed and murdered right after they surrendered. Yeah.
So with Ram, okay, so obviously this leads us into a very important development for Ramsay. Obviously, Ramsay is the bastard of Roose Bolton, and he's Ramsay Snow. So Bolton takes him out, and this was really cool that they filmed out. I guess in the location is Iceland where they're I'm assuming where they're filming for this, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
And they stand out there, and he just points out how far everything reaches, and it's at this moment that. He drives home that the North is the biggest part of the kingdoms. It's the biggest kingdom out of all of them, and he reiterates how it's basically theirs for now. And then we get the moment where he reveals to Ramsay that Ramsay is adopted in and takes on the name Bolton, and that's like the greatest thing that can be bestowed on Ramsay is the fact that he is now a Bolton, because now he is an heir to the North.
Yep, he's legitimized, and it's what he's wanted. It's actually almost a tender moment between them. I thought it was funny how, as much as you want to hate those two guys, is just to see Ramsay so happy was kind of funny.
It was an emotional moment. It was one of those few moments where you realize that they may actually be somewhat human, even though they're two very despicable individuals.
Yeah, but no, one thing to mention: did you notice where they were walking to at the end of the scene? Where they were riding towards?
Were they riding toward Winterfell?
Yep.
Okay.
And during that scene, I don't know if you heard him. He said, "We're going." Theon asked where we're going, and he goes, "We're going to our new home." So they're going to take up residence at Winterfell.
Okay.
And that's going to be awesome. I can't wait to see Winterfell again.
Yeah, the place formerly known as Winterfell, because it's been through quite a bit in the time since the Starks have all left.
Yep. And I mean, the thing to note about it is, even though it was burned, a lot of Winterfell is stone. So the wood parts need to be maintained or rebuilt, but a lot of it's intact, the stone parts. Just to throw that out there.
Okay.
And I almost think that might be the last we see of them this season, I think, because if they keep going at the pace they're going, there are several plot lines that are going to surpass the books next season for sure. Because
and the Boltons are one of them, obviously.
They're getting really close. Like there's still a decent chunk of content still, but I think at the rate they're going, that they will surpass that next season. I think we'll be seeing new. If they don't surpass it, they'll at least catch up to it. Or I mean, I'm hoping they don't do this, but I hope they don't just fill a season with filler like they did with Jon this season, or Sam and Gilly. Just kind of like fluff it up a bit. But we'll see. I have a feeling that might be the last we see them. Maybe one more scene to send them off at the episode 10.
Yeah.
Did we finish everything about Theon?
I think so, yeah. I mean, Theon obviously he's very much still Reek at the end of that scene. He has not, even though he went back to playing himself for a moment, he does understand who he is at this point, and that is Reek. He is very much in the hands of Ramsay at this point.
Oh, yes. And so let's move on to the Eyrie. Lots of interesting stuff here. There's a lot of differences here, a lot, but
so obviously in this part of the episode we see that Littlefinger's having to answer to what occurred in the Sky Room, and so are these people that he's answering to? Are these? I'm guessing. Was that Kat's mother that was one of the people that was sitting there, or was that?
No, those are basically the most powerful lords in the Vale.
Okay.
The Arryns. So the Vale is the kingdom that the Arryns rule over, and that's it's pretty much a mountainous region. And I've touched on this before, their military force and their crops, their everything is untouched. They have not participated in the war yet. They are pretty much at 100%, and so Lysa has been, murdered, or she died, and they're pretty much just having kind of a meeting to decide what's to happen, because they are, they need to decide the dispute of who's going to take control there, or figure out if Baelish had something to do with it. I don't recall the names of the younger guy and the old woman. I do not recall their names at the moment. But something interesting to note is the older guy, the chubbier guy,
Yes.
he is a Royce. And the Royces are a very, very interesting family in the books. I wish we got more info on them because they are very interesting. They are um, born of the First Men. They have the blood of the First Men in them. So they're actually really good friends with the Starks.
Being that they're both families that go very, very far back if they're both connected to the First Men.
Yeah, and just a little bit of interesting information. There's a family tree that was shown of the Starks recently, that like a little bit of history, and the Royces have married into the Starks in the past, like generations back. So they're kind of close families for being from two different regions. But anyways, one little passing mention, Sansa tells him that, hey, we've met before in Winterfell when you were taking your son to the wall. Now, if you recall the very first scene in Game of Thrones, where you have those three Night's Watch guys riding out behind the wall, and they get killed by the White Walkers, pretty much.
Yes, yes.
The leader of those three guys was Royce's son.
Oh.
Yeah, so just a little bit of connection there, like little things like that, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So this plays out very different from the books. Essentially, see, this is one thing I liked this, but I also do not like it, because what happens is they are making Sansa. Sansa is appearing very powerful and very. She's moving quickly. Like, so Peter does take Sansa as a pupil in the books, but she doesn't move this fast as how quickly she plays the game.
Right, it was like flipping a light switch. She went from being the victim to being like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna just screw it. I'm gonna take power."
She became a hot topic Sansa.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's cool to me. Let me describe my dilemma here. Is that I think it's cool that Sansa is picking up the game, because this is rapidly catching up to the books, and everybody. I know there's a lot of people like me who find Sansa's chapters are some of the most interesting in the books, actually. Especially because she hangs out with Littlefinger so much at this point. So to see that plot go further, like, it's catching up real fast. I would be very surprised if her plot line didn't surpass the books in a few episodes next season.
Okay.
Because they have sped it along so quick. Like, she wasn't making plays this early on. She was still learning in the book. But at the same token, they are making Sansa move more quickly at the expense of Baelish, because I feel like this episode makes Baelish seem like a fool because he had no backup plan.
Yeah, yeah.
He was pretty much just gonna push Lysa out the moon door, and then he had no plan after that. Like, he had no alibi. He was trying to kind of like dance around it, but you could tell they weren't buying it. Like, they didn't want him to talk to Sansa alone. It just kind of made him feel like he's not as intelligent as he should be, because the Peter Baelish in the books would never make that kind of mistake.
Right, he wouldn't do something so rash without. Yeah, he would step through the process and understand what he's doing. He sets everything up from. It's not just done on the fly. He schemes. Everything is a scheme. So yeah, he did seem. It did seem like he was backed in a corner this episode, and that's not normal for him. He normally knows the back door. He knows how to. Yeah.
So in the books, he navigates that situation and he gets out of it without Sansa's help. I mean, like, Sansa kind of agrees and collaborates his story. She does not reveal her identity there. She's still in hiding, and he pretty much navigates the situation. Like, it's very brilliant, actually. If you ever read the books, like how he navigates that situation, it's just really entertaining to read, because he plays against these. He sets a couple of these guys against each other in a meeting room, and he reveals later that he had basically befriended one of those guys a long time ago, and he was in on it. And I don't know, you'd have to read it. It's really interesting. But yeah, no, Sansa's making plays. She is she's got a new hair. She colored her hair. which is also in the books. She has revealed her identity to those three lords, but she still is trying to hide her identity at large, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. I want to see how Sansa evolves because I mean, actually after this point, the way she's playing the game, it's going to surpass the books very quickly.
Well, she might be in line for some filler then next season. We'll see how that goes.
I hope not, but yeah, that's true. We might be up for some filler with her.
I do want to say Sophie Turner continues to be an amazing actress. Like she had some great moments in this episode. She went from being extremely emotional when she was revealing her identity to that moment when she's sitting in her room and Littlefinger walks in, and just the way she delivers lines without looking at him was monotonic, but it was like monotonic with a purpose. Like it was like she was driven, and yeah, she was absolutely fantastic in this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting how that plays out. It's just crazy how fast it's moving along. Like I have mixed reactions on it, but overall, like the person in me who wants to see the plot progress, I can't wait to see what happens. But one thing we need to mention, there's just Arya and the Hound scene.
Yes.
And yeah, they're coming up to the bloody gate. The bloody Hound is going to the bloody gate, and yeah, so they get the news that Lysa Arryn is dead. And
but going into this though, the Hound was so sure he was going to get paid. He was excited, like this was payday. This is the day he was going to get paid for the whole journey. And it's great because going into that, obviously, Arya was talking about killing Joffrey. She was disappointed that Joffrey was poisoned, and they talk about the use of poison, whether that's a manly thing to do, and Hound says that's a woman's tactic, right? He says that's a woman's tactic to poison a man, and Arya kind of takes offense to that and says that she would have fought Joffrey, or at the very least killed him with a chicken bone, yeah. And which was good, and I don't know if it was a callback to I don't know, but the whole thing with chicken just kind of continues to follow these two, but yeah, so we get another scene with chicken with these two, but. Yeah, so obviously a Hound right after that just starts talking about how he's going to get paid, and then when the message is when it's revealed that Lysa has died, we obviously hear Arya break out in laughter, and that was a great moment just because it might be it's a little off-putting. At first you're like, why is she laughing that her relative died? But you realize the sheer ridiculousness of the journey and how the whole journey was to get her to safety, to get her to a family member, and the family member's dead. So, and the Hound's not going to get paid, and this whole journey is almost for naught because the end goal is not there anymore.
Yeah, and it kind of just shows how she's changed as a person, because through all of this death and tragedy she's been through, she's finding humor in it now. That's how detached she is. Like, she's gone from being a little girl to being a killer, pretty much. She's just she's the Hound Junior, pretty much. She's out on the field and she's having a good laugh about her aunt's death. And I think it's because she's at this point, she's like, what did I expect, really? It's like every time I get close to seeing my family, they get killed. So she just found some humor in it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that scene is not in the book. I found it pretty funny, but in some ways, I almost feel like it's a little unfeasible here, because she just said she's Arya Stark to the guards at the gate, and I don't think they would have let her go after that. But
we don't see what happens at the end of that, though.
That's true.
It cuts away after the laughter. We don't see what occurs after that moment. It was just them getting to the gate. So it'll be interesting to see how this season closes out for those two characters, because
that's true, because they could have something different in store for the show. They've been taking more liberties with changing things, actually. So it's very possible it could change. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that she's just kind of like, yeah, I'm Arya Stark.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's done so much to hide her identity to this point, and yeah. It's still a good scene. It's pretty funny. I love seeing that Arya and the Hound.
Yeah. So always good to see those two chumming it up together.
Mm-hmm.
I guess now we'll move across the Narrow Sea to the other side of the world, and we get a moment with Grey Worm and Missandei, or a couple of moments in this episode. We see that Grey Worm in bathing sees Missandei nude, and we start to wonder, or the question is brought up: can can a eunuch find a woman attractive? And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was
Uh,
pretty much the core of their interaction.
yeah, it's very interesting. It's something created for the show, and they almost kind of they bring up the fact like, hey, so does he have the pillar and the stones? You know, like in the books they're not supposed to have anything. They're taking out stem and root, whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's all done. But it seems like they're leaving it open in the show, which makes me think they might want to let Grey Worm still have his pillar. You know, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just taking a guess. I don't know if that's what they're doing or not. But
And as much as I love that the skin quota was met with Missandei, because
oh, she's a beautiful woman.
she's a very attractive woman. I was appreciative of that scene. This whole thing was filler. It was absolute filler, and I could tell that this was something that wasn't from the books. It just seems so cookie cutter, like these two, the slave falling in love with the interpreter, and they come from the same land, and she's teaching him English. I mean, we've seen this from early on. We saw this building up, and I think it's just sort of to add a love story in an otherwise very brutal part of the show. They want to add something that's a little more hopeful to kind of break up the hardcore violence that's going on around them.
Yeah, and it kind of personalizes the Daenerys's people a little bit more, especially now that at the end of that sequence, Jorah has been banished. So we have lost a familiar face who's around Dany.
And I was shocked. I was shocked that this went down. I guess I should have known it was coming. But then, as I had predicted earlier in the beginning of the season, I said that Ser Jorah was going to die, and I thought for damn sure that he was going to die after he was revealed that. I was like, "There's no way Danny's going to let him live." But then, once he goes into the room, that was a very emotional moment too. That was Ian Glenn is a great British actor. And that was a very touching and sad moment when he was having the one thing he loved taken away from him, because he was begging with Daenerys, begging her to to understand that he's not the same guy anymore, and it was a good scene by Emilia Clarke. That might have been her best scene of the season so far, because there was a hurricane of emotions going on in those eyes. She understood that she couldn't keep someone like that near her anymore, but obviously that was her greatest ally, her longest running ally to this point in the show.
He helped her through so much, and it's kind of sad that a lot of the things he helped her through were after he was done spying, and it's like, I guess it's like she can't forgive him for those past decisions, but if you think about it, she probably wouldn't have made it through a lot of the ordeals without him. So
Right.
it is kind of a sad thing, because Sir Friendzone is well, that's the good news, is that he's finally left the friend zone because he's not her friend no more.
No.
But it's just really sad to see him go, and he's riding off. So
He's not dead. He's not dead.
Yeah, there's still possibilities for him. Death is really final, and he's not dead, so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I gotta give it to Barristan too. I like Barristan. I like all the actors around Emilia Clarke there. I like Barristan. I like Grey Worm, and I like Missandei too. I think they do a great job.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I like the scene where Barristan approaches Jorah, and it just, I like how Jorah's like the man's man. Like, he comes up to him, he's like, "Hey, look, I wanted to tell you face to face first. I got this evidence against you. I'm just letting you know first, and I'm gonna go turn you in." Like just that he's. The thing is, Barristan, he's such a great fighter, and I don't think they portray that in the show at all.
Right.
Where even though he's an old man, he could pretty much destroy almost anybody. Like, he is that great of a fighter.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest swords of all time.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it's like Jorah didn't want to mess with him,
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just a crazy scene, and so yeah, there's not too much more to discuss about Dany's plot right now. And
No, I guess we can move directly into the events leading up to the battle and the battle itself. So obviously, the first thing that we started off with is, or before we went into the fight, we had this the tender moment between Tyrion and Jaime that went on for a few minutes longer than it probably should have. It was a nice moment, but the discussion of the Beatles and what was the cousin's name?
Ors or
Orson
Lannister.
Yes, Orson Lannister. That then the Kunka Kunka Kunk. We got a lot of Kunka Kunka Kunk, but I thought it was leading to something. I thought there was going to be some message, but the message ended up being, after 4 minutes, it was just a tender scene between two brothers and a moment of innocence and laughing
and recollection of their past.
Yes, before the bells tolled, and that was disappointing that we spent all that time and it felt sort of a waste.
It didn't deliver like an emotional punch like it should have. I don't know. It was a little tender moment, like we said, but I really wish they would have found something else to put there.
Heck, even like you said, like you and I were discussing earlier, maybe something with Oberyn, because as we would see from his fate later on, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of him.
There was definitely more content they could have done. There's plenty of more discussions in the books that are more meaty and more meaningful that I think they could have put in there. And yeah, something with Oberyn would have been nice, or maybe showing some of the other characters who are in the stands before the fight actually starts.
Yeah.
You know, maybe just talking like Cersei and Tywin, or, you know, just something like that. I mean, it is good to get a scene with Tyrion and Jaime. Don't get me wrong. I just felt like you're right. Maybe it was like 4 minutes, and I know they did the clunk, like it's like they're making fun of their retarded cousin for like half the time, and I don't know. It just felt out of place. To me, that's the low point of the episode, actually.
Yeah, it was very, very flat, and it was uncharacteristically, excuse me, I can't talk right now. It was uncharacteristically flat for a scene with Peter Dinklage. Usually, all of the vast majority, if not all of his scenes, are gold, and this just kind of went over with a thud. And it was unfortunate just because, like as you said, there are probably some other things we could have filled that with. A scene between Jaime and Tyrion is fine, but maybe find something else to discuss besides this story that apparently didn't even happen in the books.
Yeah, I did. None of that happened. I don't think Casterly Rock is like ridden with beetles, or you know, they need to get like an exterminator out there or something. But yeah. Anyways, we'll move on to the meat of the episode, the hype train here. So the big fight, man. I gotta hear your take on it.
All right, so I was anxiously awaiting. I was a little worried when I was looking, because I do tend to, as the episode goes on, and I know something big's going to happen, I do check where are we at in the timeline of the episode, and I started noticing we only had like 6 minutes left, and I was a bit disappointed because I thought we were surely going to get 15 minutes for this whole thing, and so I was a little worried at that moment, and then I started to realize you can't really have a 15-minute fight in a TV show. Viewers would probably be upset with that, but the setup was interesting. We obviously saw a very confident Oberyn. He was confident that he could take out the mountain. He knew he was going to take out the mountain. He was drinking some wine. Tyrion was worried. Tyrion was asking him, "Should you be drinking wine before a fight?" And Oberyn's like, "Don't worry. Basically, you'd rather have me drinking wine before a fight." And then everybody takes their seats, and the fight begins. And it was awesome. There were some great acrobatics, and it went tit for tat for the longest time. And I knew I had this feeling that Oberyn had to have the upper hand at some point, because we haven't seen anything of the mountain other than the little bit we saw 2 weeks ago. And so I had a great feeling that Oberyn was going to come out with the upper hand. So he hits the Achilles and tears the Achilles tendon and goes in for the stab. And then what does Oberyn do? He starts taunting. And the mountain was laying there pretty still, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this guy is a beast. This guy is massive. He's the mountain after all. I don't think he's dead yet. There's got to be some sort of final kill shot that occurs before we know he's dead. So Oberyn starts chanting the crowd, and Oberyn was very much, he was wanting revenge. He was getting the revenge that he so sorely sought out. And then What happens? It gets a little too close to the face and grabs it, and I knew, and I did not, I did not expect the brutal death that we got right after that. That was the most brutal thing I've ever seen on television.
Yeah, no, it is the most brutal thing on television. Um, yeah, man, it's crazy. It hurt to watch, even if you've read it. Like everybody was like dreading that moment too, and a lot of people thought they wouldn't go as gory as they did, and they went full out, man. The only thing they didn't include, so the fight is a little different, a little bit, and one thing is that it takes place in less of a Colosseum's area. It's more of like um, a courtyard almost, and
Okay.
there's people standing like amidst on the ground, So in the books, the mountain's just he's so. That's one thing that left out too is that the Viper keeps basically goading him on, like you killed her, you raped her, you killed her children, and he keeps repeating it, like he's drilling it into this guy. And the Hound the mountain's getting so angry. He's like, shut up, shut up. He's just losing his mind because he won't shut up. And he just keeps like swinging in rage, and he cuts down some stable boy. Like he's just like cutting into the crowd, like he's going mad, like he's becoming like some crazed animal, dude. And there's some little things.
That'd have been kind of cool to see some of that. We didn't get, and we didn't really get that. Oberyn did say it a few times that didn't really seem to phase the Mountain in this show. Like it just seemed like he just kind of swatted it away. It's like, I'm gonna fight. Shut up about your nonsense.
I'm like you. I wish that 4 minutes would have went to the fight, because the way the fight is cut, it is very fast paced. It is quick cuts. I noticed there's a lot of like fast like quick cuts, but the whole purpose, the strategy of this fight is that Oberyn was light, so he could be quick on his feet, and the reason he uses the spear is because it's the only weapon that he can outrange the mountain with.
Right.
Like if he wanted to fight with a sword, the mountain would just destroy him because he would have like twice the reach, So with the spear, the whole time, the Oberyn is just trying to keep him back with the spear at max range. So it's kind of a fight of attrition. He's trying to tire the mountain down and to get into his head with the taunts. And I wish we probably would have got more of that. But I don't know, the fight was amazing as it was. I really enjoyed it. Another thing that I think they cut because it was so gruesome. Like, obviously, Oberyn dies the exact same way in the books.
Okay.
Except for they cut out, right after that, where they cut the Tyrion. Tyrion is so shaken he throws up. So I think they cut the vomit out because then people might have got sick. I don't know.
Yeah, when you have brain matter on the pavement, I think that's enough. I don't think we need to see vomits. I think that would have elicited people to vomit, like you said, actually throw up in their living room. I think that would have definitely occurred. But no matter how much with Oberyn, we're introduced to him at the beginning of this season. Here, I thought he was going to be another fan favorite. I mean, he was a fan favorite through the course of the season, but I thought he was going to be one of those guys who's going to stick around and be another Jon Snow, another Dany, another Tyrion, another guy that was just going to be something that everybody looked forward to. And that's the thing about George R. R. Martin's universe. You can't have plans for characters. No matter what you want, it doesn't matter. He has it. Don't get attached to anybody. Like shit, man, I don't know if Tyrion dies next week. I don't know. I mean, it's like anything goes in this show. It doesn't matter what you play. And I was thinking back today, during season 3, before the Red Wedding, Tyrion is running. Well, no, I guess it was in season 2 at the season. Yeah, season 2 was when Theon was sorry, not Tyrion. Theon was going to he took Winterfell right at the end of season 2.
Uh-huh.
I had this plan that Theon was going to rule over Winterfell. Robb was going to come back, and they were going to have this moment where it was going to be, former brothers who go mano-a-mano or something like that. I had this whole plan. I had this storybook way of it playing out. None of it played out that way. Robb gets killed at a wedding. Theon gets turned into a slave. I mean, it's just it doesn't matter what you plan for a character. You can't begin to predict where the story's going. It's just going to go. I mean, that's why George R. R. Martin's. This show is beautiful because you cannot predict anything that goes on.
It is very unpredictable, and that's why I love it. But man, I really wanted it. Like I was like hoping secretly that they would retcon Oberyn's death. Like man, maybe they'll let him live. Like I had like a secret little hope, but I knew they had to kill him though because his death's pretty important too.
Now,
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say is that it's a little something that people might have overlooked because of the brutal death is that the Mountain does admit to killing Elia as he's killing Oberyn.
Yes.
He confesses in front of everybody there that, hey, yeah, I killed her, I raped her, and I crushed her skull like this, and he did it, and he admitted it in front of everybody there.
Not that it matters, because he's the Mountain. Now, I couldn't tell if he was dead or he just fell asleep at the end because he's such a massive man. I'm assuming he's dead. He did take some. If he's not dead, he's pretty much done as a fighter because Oberyn took out his Achilles tendon, and that's pretty much damning. But I'm assuming he's dead. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
later on.
I could go into more details about what's going on, but I don't want to. I want to let you see what happens for yourself.
Okay, yeah, because Tyrion lost. I mean, that's what was declared. It did sort of look like a draw, but I guess the last man who was breathing was the Mountain. So I guess Tyrion does lose, even though one could say it was a draw.
Yeah, Oberyn died first, so there you go. Yeah, man. So it's crazy stuff. We got two crazy episodes to look forward to. I still think there's still a handful of huge shockers they're gonna drop on us. There's a lot going on. So
I don't believe anybody is safe at this point. I mean, anybody could die, and I don't. There's certain characters I don't want to die, but you can't get attached to anybody. I was getting pretty attached to Oberyn in the limited time I had, but I was getting attached to it at a pace that was like, we're gonna have him around for a while, so I'm not gonna get, I'm gonna let the love build. I'm gonna let it build up to where he's my favorite character. But now he gets taken away from me before that could happen. So that was and at first I was angry. I'll admit I was very angry when Oberyn died, just because I let out a Jesus Christ, and then I let out an F bomb at the end, just because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I went to bed. I went to bed just thinking about that because Martin just he's taking me on a wild ride.
oh yeah, but yeah, man. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to touch on the episode?
No, and I'm not even going to begin to predict anything. I'm just completely at a loss of words. I'm just gonna watch the last two episodes in amazement as the show continues on.
Oh yes, and just a little tidbit here is that we can look forward to the longest episode of Game of Thrones ever for the season finale. I forgot the runtime on it, but it's like a couple minutes longer than the previous longest episode.
Okay.
So we're getting treated to some extra footage, extra runtime. So more time to be amazed.
Kudos to HBO.
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to go ahead and take this time to say, if you guys are new here and you're just watching us, tuning in, check us out at altness.com. We are doing a review episode for every Game of Thrones episode. There's only 2 left this season, but I imagine we'll be back next season to do this, and probably for some other shows too, maybe.
Yeah.
And also at altness.com, we just did some celebrity interviews from Comic Palooza, Lou Ferrigno, some of the comic book men, Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy. So yeah, if you're interested in any of those kind of interviews, go check us out at altness.com. Those interviews all came up this past week, and we still have a couple more to release. Join us next week. We'll be discussing the episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall. Yeah, we look forward to it, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. This is Brian McBall signing out.
And Jordan Wade. Jordan Wade signing out as well.
All right, you guys have a good one.